Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I wasn't actually going to do a midweek video, but I was watching the England game and it kind of stirred up various kind of things I felt I wanted to talk about. And then I realised that a few more questions came in under the last video that were a bit different to previous ones I've answered. So I thought, why not? A bit of spare time. I am in the middle of a couple of weeks off at the moment. So I thought, why not? Do another little video, discuss certain Spurs aspects of this World Cup so far. Obviously, Spurs back in training as well. Those players not at the World Cup, well, some of them, as we'll come to later. And there's enough, I thought, just to kind of chuck together another little video for anyone that, needed it in the background for some little distraction. I don't know. Start with the England game. Obviously, terrific result, really good. England unbeaten now in those first three games and looked pretty solid at the back again, albeit Wales didn't really offer too much going forward. Probably the main talking point for me is Harry Kane. I felt the criticism. There was criticism of him yesterday, and I felt that was harsh. I really did. For me, there was a little. Spurs fans will have seen the way Harry Kane was playing and seen similarities to the way he plays for club as he does for country, in terms of there were so many moments when he just wasn't getting the service up front, so he would naturally drop deeper and then he would come deeper, get the ball, hold it up well, turn well with it and progressively pass the ball up the pitch, use it well, and then the next player would take it on and lose it. Or Kane would try a pass and the other player maybe was on the same wavelength and it didn't go through to him. I kind of felt, Kane always seems to be... It's interesting. Whereas at Spurs, we very much know who scapegoats are and stuff like that in the Tottenham squad. But when it comes to England, I feel that if England aren't performing up front, people instantly look to Harry Kane. And I guess that's the burden of being the captain, being probably the best player in the team. The one that people will say is definitely world class. And I guess, if the team aren't performing up front, naturally I think eyes turn to him. And I felt again yesterday it was a little bit unfair. I said it the moment I tweeted something out the moment the halftime whistle went about pretty much what I've just said about I felt that he was the one trying to use the ball. I mean, you saw terrific ball through to Marcus Rashford early on, and unfortunately tried to lift it over the keeper. It just didn't quite work. And I felt that there was lots of little moments like that where he was trying to push the ball forward and then others just weren't getting the ball back to him. So that frustration of not having the ball back to you naturally always brings Kane that little bit deeper. But what I would say is Harry Kane is brilliant in that position as well. It's the age-old thing we say about Spurs matches as well, that if you could clone Harry Kane, if you could have two Harry Kanes in the England team as well as the Spurs team, you'd probably have certainly Premier League winning Tottenham team and probably a World Cup winning England team as well, because I do think he's that good. If you had someone as creative and with his eye for a pass behind him, yes, we hope the likes of James Maddison, Phil Foden, people like that can go on to provide that, but it would help having another Harry Kane in that team. And yes, I know it's not scientifically possible at this moment in time. I just thought that was unfair. And of course, he grabbed an assist second half. I think Alan Shearer, I was watching it on the BBC, and Alan Shearer had not a pop at him, but more kind of explaining about him coming deep, stuff like that. But it's a natural kind of knock-on effect of poor service into him. That's what he does. And it's all very well saying stay up there, but the problem is if the ball's never coming to you, you naturally have to get yourself involved in the game. It would be different if they were pinging in amazing balls constantly and Harry Kane just wasn't in the right position to get them, because that wasn't the case. They weren't. His assist was fantastic. Poor Ben Davies. Ben Davies, unfortunately, couldn't handle the pressure, quite literally, on the pitch. I can't remember who it was now. Someone closed him down, ball gets knocked, and Kane, just instinctive. He'd already looked up before. He knew exactly where the players were coming in and just swings in this low ball. The one that defenders and goalkeepers hate because it dissects them right between them. There's no way. If the defender gets his foot on it, it's probably going into net as an own goal. If the goalkeeper manages to get to it, then he's probably just pushing it out to an opponent. It's one of those where there's a massive hesitation, and that's where the attacking team profits. As it was said in the commentary, it's spot on. It's the exact ball that Harry Kane wanted. It's the service Harry Kane wanted, but he had to provide it himself. And that means, we can talk all we want about him not having scored yet. Obviously wanting to reclaim his golden boot, but nobody has provided more assists at this World Cup than Harry Kane thus far at this point of recording this video, which, says everything. Sometimes you'll have strikers that, if they're not contributing, that's it, because their game is about goals. And we know Harry Kane is so different. And that's why you're seeing, he's leading up there at the top of the assist charts for the World Cup. I'm not entirely sure if there is a Playmaker award. I feel like there has been. I don't know whether I'm thinking Euros or World Cup, but, look, we're not in it. He's not in it for the individual trophies anyway. Harry Kane would tell you straight off the bat that he wants to win it, the World Cup with England, not focus on the individual trophies. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about Harry Kane. I do. Do I feel he's moving as freely? There's little times when you maybe see him, but then for the pressing, for the goal, he definitely sprinted across as well, played his part in the press. It's quite interesting. There was someone did a little video afterwards, or a photo. I think it was Jack Grealish and maybe Declan Rice were doing some kind of photo or something that went on Instagram afterwards. And you can see in the background Harry Kane putting on his right boot or taking it off. I'm not sure which way around it was. You can see that funny little strapping that he's got. Because it's interesting, because Gareth Southgate said it's a foot injury, not an ankle injury. But you can definitely see the strapping appears to be around his ankle. Obviously, it may go all the way down. But it looked that he was... It's massively drawing conclusions that I probably shouldn't be from a photo. Excuse me. Got a right tickle in my throat now. It was definitely definitely. I don't use the word definitely. He appeared to be trying to pull... I guess... I was pulling on the boot off or putting it on. I have to have a drink in a minute. Technically, I guess if you've got strapping on your ankle, it's going to be that little bit more difficult. I'm going to have a drink, otherwise you're going to have me constantly coughing. Oh, is it on that side? It is actually a Tottenham glass. Very old one. It's kind of peeling off, but it is one that was got for me one Christmas or birthday. So yeah, whether that strapping is the case of him kind of having to gingerly put on or take off a boot, or whether he just has to do it because he's slightly inflamed down there, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's affecting his game to any degree. It was quite interesting. I think it must have been from his... I think it was an interview with the BBC. I looked at the quotes, and he said about the scan, it was pretty much clear of anything. And I found the pretty much quite interesting. So clearly there was a little something there. But nothing that is actually of any danger of worsening and stuff like that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be playing on it. Especially, you wouldn't play him yesterday. You would have played Callum Wilson, who I thought looked quite bright as well when he came on. I thought Callum Wilson looked sharp as well. So I think he's definitely going to be an option in these kind of latter stages of hopefully games. I was going to say game, but hopefully games, depending on how they do on Sunday. But no, I thought it was a bit harsh, everything on Harry Kane. I do feel quite literally he has, he has the weight of the country on his shoulders. And it's interesting, he made the comparison himself. He remembers when he was a kid and there was an injury, wasn't it Beckham's metatarsal, and then Rooney was similar as well. And the whole country kind of really overanalyzing it and everything, and their injury return. And he kind of feels this is a little bit what's happening with him, and he feels absolutely fine. So we'll see. But the fact is, he is still contributing. To have, contributed more assists than anyone else in the competition thus far. It's pretty impressive for me. And actually, on Harry Kane, I went to see his exhibit on Monday. He has got an exhibit at the Museum of London, which is not far from St Paul's Station. It's called the London Wall. That is down that way. It's only there for about another week, because that museum is closing. I think it's site, and I don't think that either the exhibit is going with it, although speaking to funny enough, a Spurs fan, lady outside, who was telling me that the new museum doesn't open until 2024 anyway, so perhaps that's the reason for it. But it's a really good little exhibit. It's only about, it's quite, I guess, a big room, but it's just packed with all of Harry Kane's stuff, I guess, from over his career. It's very cool. All of his trophies. As soon as I said that, I knew exactly what people would respond to. Individual trophies. So all of his, golden, some of his golden boots are in there. His MBE, various Man of the Match awards. It was labelled up as PFA Player of the Year award, but it was the Young Player of the Year award that was in there. All various shirts. You can even try on his boots. Although I went with Jonathan Veal. Met up with him. He was covering the darts that day, so I met up with him. We popped across. I wasn't able to put the boots on because I'm a size 11 feet, and these boots were a size 8. Jonathan Veal was able to put them on, although it was a bit tight. And I think I put something out about Harry Kane's size 8s, and then I deleted it because I don't know whether they were definitely the boots in the cases that were definitely his match-worn boots. They were all signed and everything. They looked to us to be a little bit bigger. We couldn't tell how kind of big they were. And I just wonder whether the ones they have for people to try on maybe are a slightly smaller size. Because I think it's about 6'2", Harry Kane. So to have size 8 feet, possibly unlikely. And like we say, the ones in the glass cases looked a little bit bigger. So, yeah, I kind of realised maybe I was making him look like he had quite small feet for a big man, as it were. But no, back on track. Really good exhibition. Like right from the start, Ridgeway Rovers, when he was a young kid. Funnily enough, I know one of his coaches back in those days, Dave Bricknell, who he was also manager of Cheshunt when I used to cover them in local papers. Back they were in Ryman League Division 1 North back in those days, one for the non-league guys there. Yeah, and it had his shirt from there. It had really good stuff from his school report. It was a nice little school thing he'd written, and it was like this little kind of phrases, and at the bottom it just says, "I just want to play football." And I think he was only like 7 or 8. It's lovely when you see that sort of stuff, and now he's the England captain playing at World Cup. It's class. So yeah, the exhibit's really cool. All of his various shirts after hat-tricks and things signed by all the squad. His England hat-trick shirt and ball when he scored, because he only the third player, wasn't he? I think to score a hat-trick at a World Cup for England. Was it Gary Lineker and Jeff Hurst? The others. Why my throat is all tickly today. It's not the thing that we used to always think was the dry tickly cough thing. Apologies for being slightly unprofessional, but that is why I always have a glass down there just in case. But yeah, really good exhibit. Like I say, I feel like it's December 3rd or 4th, but double check just in case it's earlier than that. But I would really go and try to see it. If you're a Spurs fan and you live nearby, it's free. Obviously, you can make a donation as you go in, as all museums work like that, or most of them do in England. It's really nice, though. His family have kept so much from his career. It's lovely. It's a really nice exhibit. No photos of his time at Arsenal, those few little youth years. It is mentioned. There's one of the bits on the wall about how he was obviously cast out from Arsenal, as it were, rejected at Arsenal, and then came back with a vengeance, as it were. It's good. It's a really good exhibit. Honestly, it's packed full of stuff. Just for the sake of, like I say, a big room. I can't even describe the size of it. Almost like a school assembly hall kind of size. But there's so much stuff in it. It's really, really good. So yeah, I very much had Harry Kane on my mind ahead of the game, because I kind of just refreshed knowledge of his kind of growing up and stuff, and his career and how far he's come and everything. And yeah, and just the usual stuff he gets on social media. That's just what he does. He knows it. I'm sure he pays absolutely no interest to it whatsoever. But even the little tweet I put out at half-time, which was before Shearer's analysis, and you just get a couple of Arsenal fans, of course, make their point. Some Liverpool fans. Just, I guess it's from clubs who haven't liked, or fans that haven't liked him in the past. They use it as a bit of a stick to beat him with, don't they? The fact that he got an assist means nothing. It's just a shame because I do feel that he's going to be one of these players that the rest of the country don't appreciate fully, maybe until he hangs up his boots. I've got mates that kind of support teams as you go down the leagues, and it's funny because once you get out of that Premier League bubble and the rivalry, you really do kind of drill down a little bit better. You get maybe a better idea of perhaps what the general country thinks about him. And got a mate, Matt, who's a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and he will rave about Harry Kane. He will say what a player, and the stuff he does with the ball and things like that. And it's interesting when you step outside that tribal rivalry, there is that appreciation. But obviously, there's such a big kind of swathe of the country, clubs, Premier League club fans. So, yeah, I don't know whether he'll be truly appreciated. But very quickly on other players that played, non-Spurs players in the England team, I thought Rashford got better and better as it wore on. Obviously, when he took that free kick, there was a moment where all Spurs fans, you could see Harry Kane kind of hovering over it. And I think all the Spurs fans were like, no, Harry, it's all right. You can do a lot of other great stuff. Maybe not the free kicks. Maybe step away from that. And I think even the commentator said something about his free kick record not being particularly great. Yes, that's probably being kind. It's rotten. It really is. And lo and behold, Marcus Rashford steps up and curls a beauty. Goalkeeper position, not the greatest, but still lovely free kick. Really nicely caught. And then, Kane's lovely assist to Foden. Thought Foden again kind of showed why he's that wild card, isn't he? Is there a touch of Gaza to him? Maybe. There's a little bit of that kind of just ability to produce magic out of any moment. There were times where he went a little bit off the boil. I do feel he's better when he comes centrally rather than shoved out wide. But I like Foden. I think he's going to be absolutely class as he goes on. He will probably be the next one to become world class. And then, Rashford obviously got his second. Iffy goalkeeping a bit for me. I've no idea how that ended up in the net, but good run, of course. Really nice jinking run and into the goal it goes. So, 3-0, very comprehensive. Wales, like I say, didn't offer too much. Oh, Jude Bellingham. I've got to talk about Jude Bellingham. Oh, my goodness. Honestly, swiftly becoming my kind of favourite non-Spurs player in that England side. He's just going to be a superstar. There's no kind of other way to put it. Do you know who he reminds me of? And I know some people now go, oh, no way. But he reminds me, maybe in terms of that kind of sheer disregard for his age and confidence that he has, of the Dele Alli, so sad to say in this prime because, he's still so young. But Dele Alli in those first few years when he hit the stage, I kind of see that in Jude Bellingham. That just real tactical knowledge of the game, being able to see the way the game has played out and having that confidence in his own ability and no fear whatsoever. Obviously plays in a deeper role than Dele, although Dele could use to play that role. I remember his first game, or first couple of games, he played alongside Eric Dyer. It was against Leicester, maybe he came on in that position. And then maybe started the next game. I can't remember who it was against. But I could just see little flashes of the way they play. Hopefully, obviously, we all hope that Jude Bellingham's career continues to kind of that rocket ascent that Dele Alli was on to begin with, and that he can maintain it. It's just terrific young player. I would love to see him at Tottenham, but I think there's going to be a long queue of the world's best clubs trying to prize him away from Germany. Brilliant player. Absolutely brilliant. And, really, you'd think we'll end up in the team of the World Cup if England continue on this trajectory they're on as well because, brilliant player. As for the Welsh Spurs players on the world side, obviously Ben Davies picked up an injury. We did pick up an injury, had to come off towards the end, so hopefully nothing serious. He had a tough game. I felt Ben Davies obviously pressured for the second goal. Joe Rodon was okay. Nothing spectacular, but I think he can look back on his first ever World Cup having, not done himself any harm. I thought he came out with his head held reasonably high. A couple of little moments, couple of little defensive mistakes, but for Wales, essentially, it was all done against Iran, wasn't it? That was the game that damaged everything for them. Their performance in that just wasn't good enough. Could probably say the big players didn't step up enough for them. Bale and Ramsey. I'm intrigued to see more of Brennan Johnson. I do think Brennan Johnson's going to be a very good player as well. It'd be interesting with Bale because all the noise, obviously, in the past was very much felt like he was going to probably retire after this World Cup. But he's been quite clear in recent days that he's not, saying that it would not be his last game for Wales. So, I mean, I think he's contracted to another year in LA. So maybe he plays out another season for them, tries to get them to the Euros, and then maybe makes a decision on that. But yeah, I don't think. Obviously, it looked like he went off with some kind of injury. I haven't kind of followed the post-Wales stuff afterwards, but you presume it was an injury for him to come off at half-time, as their talisman. But yeah, Wales for them. My throat is absolutely doing me today. I'm sure. Excuse me. I'm sure for Wales, the fact that they got there, was it the first World Cup in 62, 64 years? I can't remember what the exact number was. That's where they've achieved. And to be there was incredible. It's just a shame they weren't able to really kind of take it on any further. As we've seen, them do certainly at the Euros before they had a good run as well. So, yeah, so all over for Wales. But I guess they're kind of pride to be there. I know a couple of Welsh fans who were just so proud to see their team at a World Cup. I guess that's what it's about as well. Obviously, England will now play Senegal on Sunday. Pape Matar Sarr through to the next round. Obviously, unlikely to start the game, but a great experience for him. Having also won the Africa Cup of Nations as well, now in the World Cup last 16. It'll be a good game. You'd imagine Senegal won't sit back, that they'll kind of have a go, which might play its way into England's hands a bit. They might change their tactics to see. I think the thing about England, I think a lot of the countries will be looking at is the embarrassment of riches they have up front. The fact that Southgate was able to bring in Foden and Rashford to swap out Saka and Sterling. And, I really like Saka. Sterling, for me, is a funny one. Some games he can look an absolute world beater, and some games he can look a little bit kind of out of the match, a bit lost. Sometimes his technique lets him down, but on other games he can be absolutely incredible. Saka, for me, it's interesting. Southgate has his favourites. He has those he's loyal to, his more experienced players. So I'd be intrigued to see what he does with the two around Kane in the next game, because I don't know which way he'll go with that. Because, do you bring, let's say, Saka back in, or do you stick with the two that did play well, Foden and Rashford? I don't think Rashford can come out now. That's a definite. You'd imagine, would Mount come back in? I thought Henderson did well. I think he brings that experience. He's a bit like Højbjerg for me, in that he'll have moments where he does things that are really good technique-wise, and in the next moment will do things that kind of aren't as great. But also a player that when you take him out of the team, you do lose a little something, whether it's that experience and that kind of knowledge of what to do in certain situations. I don't know whether he goes back with Mount or not. Back to Spurs things. So England-Senegal, that'll be an interesting one on Sunday. South Korea, watched bits of their game against Ghana. Obviously, they threw everything at them, tried to get back into it, but just couldn't quite influence that one. Obviously, Sonny, a bit like Kane, obviously haven't scored either in this World Cup. Bentancur almost scored a beauty, didn't he, against Portugal? But it wasn't to be for them either. Cristiano Ronaldo with that goal, quote marks. It's one of those where I'm sure people will analyse that. I don't know whether you can, some kind of system where you can actually tell whether he got a piece of his hair to it or not. He says he did, and I'm sure he would. I'm sure most strikers would claim it. Another win for Richarlison, of course. They beat Switzerland. And I think there's a load more today, isn't there? Denmark and France both playing today. Who was the other one? There was another one today. Oh, of course, Romero playing for Argentina as well. I think that's it for today's Spurs people at the World Cup. As for the rest of the Spurs players, a load of them, as I said, came back on Monday at Hotspur Way. I think it was the non-international players, so I think the ones who got a couple of friendlies under the belt, like the Matt Dohertys of this world, got a couple of extra days off. But the ones who weren't featuring in any international form of anything came back on Monday. And what it was a little bit like the start of a normal pre-season, that they came back and they worked with the fitness coaches, going through various, how do I put it, stretches, exercises, things like that, which in turn also meant Antonio Conte didn't need to come back for the start of training, which has always been the way in the summer as well with various managers. So it very much is like a mini pre-season. So it gave Conte a little bit of extra time off with the family, and then he'll be back and they'll all kind of whack on straight into their full training, which, as I said before, certain players I think are really going to benefit from it. Jed Spence, Yves Bissouma, I think Oliver Skip as well, getting that time with him. Kulusevski getting back to full fitness will be a good one as well. As you can tell, I've gone quite snotty. Do you know what it is? It's a really weird thing. And this is absolutely no use to anyone in this video. But sometimes when I sneeze for like the next hour, I'm really, really kind of snotty. Really, really strange. I don't know why. But back to Hotspur Way. I don't know what I decided to tell you about my snot and sneezing. Hotspur Way, those players, I'm trying to think. The right wing back thing will be key, obviously. We'll eventually have all three of them back there, and who kind of gets that time with him. Ryan Session, of course, more time to work with him. Alfie Whiteman's back from his loan at Degerfors. So first chance for him. I'm trying to think if he's worked with Conte's goalkeeping coaches or whether he was out already on loan. This might be his first opportunity. I think he's coming to the end of his contract. Give Conte a little look at some of the kind of under 21 players as well, who will flesh out the group. Although, it's Conte. He's unlikely to play them anyway. Talking of young players, Dane Scarlett. Speaking in the last video, wasn't I, about the fact that Spurs hadn't given him permission to play in the second round, and we'd have to see about the third round, and obviously whether they were going to call him back. And Spurs draw Portsmouth in the third round. But Dane Scarlett must have been like, of course. It's at home. It's a good game for Spurs, of course. Good game for Portsmouth as well. Big game. But it's the kind of draw that Spurs would want. Let's be honest. It's a home draw against a team in the lower leagues. It is a good draw from that respect, and it also allows Conte to not have to keep chucking in various players who might be a little bit jaded after the World Cup. He'll be able to rotate a little bit. But yeah, poor old Dane. He couldn't play anyway for Portsmouth. FA rules prevent him from playing against his parent club. The only way is as if Spurs had recalled him with a plan to send him out elsewhere, and then he would be able to play. Whether they do that or not, we'll see. I did feel it was a bit odd that they didn't play or allow him to play in those FA Cup matches. It did suggest a potential recall, which I think would be a shame, because I do feel that is it a good place for him right now in his career. Harry Kane started off in the lower kind of end with Leyton Orient to begin with. I don't think it's a bad thing to not throw them into the next kind of step up straight away. Just let them kind of breathe a bit and develop and grow, and but we'll see with Dane Scarlett. And like I say, good FA Cup game that. Spurs Portsmouth got a bit of history. That FA Cup semi-final, remember that as well. What was that FA Cup semi-final? Wasn't it under Redknapp? Was it under Redknapp or against Redknapp? Might have been against Redknapp. Or was it then against Portsmouth with Redknapp as well? I don't know. Can't remember. I just remember them losing. So many games to try and keep in this very small brain. Quick note, obviously a sad thing. Maurice Norman, member of Bill Nicholson's double winning side, died 88 last weekend. Very sad. I didn't manage to get that into the last video, so just kind of wanted to mention that. I think he started off as a left back and then became a centre half. made 411 appearances for Spurs between 1955 and 1965, and he's only one of only 13 players to reach that 400 game milestone with Spurs since they joined the Football League. So very sad indeed. One of those players that is absolutely associated with Bill Nick's team, the double-winning team, obviously the first team to win a European Cup, first British team to win a European Cup as well. European trophy, I should say, not European Cup. Wonderful player from the past. Obviously a bit before my time, so I've only seen kind of clips and bits here and there and other people speaking about him, but sounded like a proper player. Very sad indeed. Right, I'll do a few questions that were left underneath the last video. As I say, excuse me, by all means, always put questions underneath. It always allows me to kind of have something else to speak about, especially in a week like this or weeks like this when there's not too much from a Spurs perspective going on, although somehow we've got to half an hour. And speaking about mainly Spurs, I think, it does give me something extra to kind of talk about that maybe I wouldn't have planned to talk about. So let's have a look. What have we got? The club are David Grove 9731 asked, the club are obliged to play an under-21 development game at the stadium every season. In fact, there were 2 last year. Do you know if there are any arrangements made for this season, and if so, when will it be? Also, I'd like to get your thoughts on young midfielder Alfie Devine. I've had the pleasure of watching him live in a couple of development games, and each time he's been head and shoulders above everyone else on the pitch. He's an extraordinary talent, mature beyond his years. It's early days for him, but I think we could have a budding superstar on our hands. Right, so the first question, I just want to double check, because sometimes they do pop it on the calendar. I don't think they've stuck any in there yet. No. There is normally one, because I went towards the end of last season, Spurs-Brighton. It was 0-0, wasn't the greatest. Alfie played in that game. I'd imagine there will be at least one. Obviously not decided yet. Presumably they have to wait until the fixture schedule kind of sorts itself out a little bit and they know where and when the first team will be at home. I'm pretty sure there will be one. Like you say, I do think it is obliged as well. As of Alfie, Alfie is, yes, he has all the foundations there to be a top young player. Now it's just down to Alfie, and it's down to opportunities as well. Conte had him on his bench a few times last season. Obviously didn't use him. He got his debut under Mourinho, didn't he? Came on against Marine, became the club's youngest ever goal scorer as well. A lovely finish. I've seen quite a bit of Alfie as well. He does look like, I guess it's weird to say when he is so young. Was he 18 now? Has he even turned 18? But he does look like a man among boys at times. Sorry, my nose has got so snotty. It's so difficult with young players. I'm very wary of building them up too much. He says it after saying that Jude Bellingham's going to be one of the best in the world. But although Jude Bellingham has already reached a very, very high level. With Alfie, everything's on him. I do think it is. He probably was, he was likely to head out on loan this season, and then he picked up a really frustrating hamstring injury. I was at the game that he did it at the Lamex at Stevenage. And he picked up a hamstring injury at that, which kind of stopped the chances of him heading out on loan, and you'd presume now that will happen in January. He needs it for me. He needs to do what Dane's done. He needs to go to I'd say a League One team, maybe. That kind of level. Get him playing week in, week out, every minute possible, and I think you'll see a very rapid development. He needs to experience what it's like to play against, I guess, senior football. Coming up against people that are going to batter into big physical types, and how he adjusts and learns to that. I've seen him play in so many different positions. I've seen him playing as an attacking midfielder and look superb at it, but I've also seen him take on a bit of a give the ball to me kind of role as like an anchor man, kind of, switching out with Jamie Bowden. It worked pretty well. Actually, it was in that game against Brighton. I saw him do that as well. He's very, very talented. Watched one of the UEFA Youth League games. Who was that against? was it Frankfurt? I'm trying to think who it was. When he scored a couple of goals, linking up with Jamie Donnelly really well. Jamie Donnelly scored a beauty for the under-18s the other day. But with Alfie, Jamie Donnelly could be a very, very good player if he keeps going kind of as he's going. I think he's another one that could probably do with a loan. But I'm intrigued to see how he and Will Lancashire work as a kind of partnership in those youth ranks. Obviously, Jamie Donnelly's been playing quite a bit more in a midfield role this year rather than the striker he is. I think they're trying to flesh out his skill set, as it were, and experience. But back to Alfie, get him a good loan. Very talented young man. I can't see him getting minutes under Conte at the moment, unless against Portsmouth. That's a potential, I guess. But such a big squad. Is there even space to put young players in? It's an interesting way the squad works at Spurs now. We used to be able to say, Poch would chuck in 3 or 4 youngsters on the bench, and Mourinho did it as well. Conte had to do it kind of out of necessity last season, but now the squad's big enough, probably doesn't even have to do that. It's nice to see these young players though. John Padley 2861 asks, another longer question: do you think now that Poch, Jose and Conte have commented that they haven't asked the team to sit so deep or play so cautiously, it's the on-field instructions that are? I sometimes feel that as much as Hugo is the best goalkeeper I've seen for Spurs, he lacks the confidence in his leadership and approach, distribution mainly. He's more likely to have a big mistake than a big performance in the games that count. I actually panic when the starting 11 contains Hugo, Sanchez, Dyer and Emerson. As soon as one starts to panic, it spreads like wildfire. I wonder if a more commanding presence is needed to reassure everyone. That's tough on Hugo. I'd say he's more likely to have a big mistake than a big performance in the games that count. I don't think that's fair. I wouldn't agree with that. I've seen him have some big, big matches in big games. So I don't agree with that entirely. I do think he has a mistake in him. Often that's when he's kind of asked to play in a way that doesn't suit him, and often it involves his feet, I think. Using his feet isn't too great. I wouldn't blame Hugo for the team sitting back. I don't think he's telling them to do that. I know what you mean about having a dominant voice on the pitch, but what I would say is, and we noticed this during lockdown, when the crowds weren't allowed in, you could hear Hugo. He is constantly shouting, and Dyer does as well. So no, I don't think. I get your meaning that those 4 players you mentioned can all have a mistake in them, and that can knock the confidence, I guess. But no, I just think it's a weird, natural thing that often happens with Spurs. And they just need someone in those moments to take the game by the scruff of the neck. Sometimes it's Kane, sometimes it's Sonny, sometimes it's one of the midfielders, but it needs to happen more often. That's a good question, though. Awesome 23JC asks, if you could be a character in any movie and live their life, who would it be and why? I'd go back to my youth, and it would have to be either Indiana Jones or Superman for differing reasons. Indiana Jones to see the world, find things that had never been found before, or not in many, many centuries, and Superman because of all the cool powers he's got. DAIPYC1 asks, as a well-travelled man, which country do you think would do a good job at hosting the World Cup? Personally, I think Australia would be great. Sportsman people, the infrastructure already in place with big stadiums, etc. Yeah, I think that would probably be quite logical as the next place. The next one is America, Canada and Mexico, isn't it? Yeah, I think Australia. I don't see why not. I think it's a long way to go, but why not? I can't see why taking the World Cup over there. I think obviously more in Asia at some point definitely needs to be done. But yeah, no, I like the Australia idea. I'll go with that. I think that would be a good one. I haven't been to Australia. That's on my list of one of the places I want to go to. I joined just after. I started covering Spurs just after I did their tour to Melbourne. Unfortunately, missed out on that. Cootie4873 asks, a lot of the ENIC out fans always criticise Levy and ENIC for their focus of real estate and property development. I'm an overseas fan, so can you please explain to me why this is the case? From what I'm aware, the apartments hotel, the third phase of the North London project, so the NLPD project, which is a catalyst for improvement in the Tottenham area. Is this correct? Right, I can understand definitely the timings of things that have happened over the years. When Spurs haven't been playing particularly well and a planning application, let's say, goes in, it doesn't look great. It's kind of seen as a separate side to the business because obviously they've got all the stuff going on at the goods yard, which is going to be a big kind of housing thing. I suppose there are two sides to Spurs. One is the football club, and one is the desire through the football club to improve the local area and regenerate the local area, which in turn, I guess, feeds into the football club. Spurs always say that any money generated goes back into the football club. Yes, I agree. I can understand the frustration when a club hasn't won any trophies, that you see them involved in planning things and stuff like this. I get it. I totally get it. So that's kind of why the criticism comes. So I can understand frustration when you see stuff like that. But like I say, I'll say it again, it's kind of a bit boring, but it is my view on the whole Enoch Levy thing. On the pitch, no, I don't think enough's been done over the years, hence why one trophy in 20 plus years now of ownership. Off the pitch, taking aside all of the other developmenty stuff, I think in terms of the club, the training ground, the stadium, I don't think you can argue that Spurs are a much bigger club in terms of infrastructure now and the trajectory, the foundations of where they can go in the future. But yes. No, I could understand the frustration about the property side of things. But it's a difficult one because it's almost kind of separate subjects. It doesn't always feel like it is, but it kind of is. Whereas, I don't think ever you'd see a situation where something, because they were buying a piece of or involved in a kind of a housing project, I don't think that would affect what they're doing with the football club, if you see what I mean. It's difficult to explain. It's one of those that needs a real kind of deep dive video at some point, which maybe I'll do. It's a difficult one because you'd probably lose a lot of people that don't really care about that side of things. There's a real look towards regenerating the area, I think is key to kind of what they're trying to do. I'm sure there's a case of making money as well. But the club always say that all of that, anything like that, and under the club's name, goes back into the club. We shall see. Similar topic, in a way, about the owners. Sui3022 asks, do you think that one of Joe Lewis's children may take over as CEO, chairman of the club one day? Maybe after the family trust changes are in place. They're already in place. I remember reading that Lewis's daughter Vivian is on the board of Tavistock. She has an interest in Spurs, attends going regularly. She does, from what I understand. Yeah, no, I've certainly heard. I know of people that have spoken to her, and she is kind of a more regular presence at games. I don't know, really, to be honest. I don't know what the Joe Lewis intentions are. Looks like the likelihood would be that his children would take over, or certainly there's the family trust thing, would take over the running of his assets. Whether that still includes Tottenham at that later date, I don't know. It's a difficult one for me to answer that. I can't really put myself into the mindset of a billionaire in his 80s. I wish I could. Well, not now, but I wish I could when I was 80. God, wouldn't that be weird to own Tottenham Hotspur? It would be an interesting experience. Don't know whether I'd be better or worse. Or whether you'd think too much like a fan. I don't know. There's one for you to ponder. What would you be like? It's it's quite easy, isn't it, to say, if I do this, I do that. But then maybe I'd send it the way of like a a Leeds or any team that's had financial difficulties over the years and overspend trying to make them, big contenders. Glovelock says, will you revert back to a regular Spurs fan, cheering goals, etc., once you retire from journalism, or is that impossible due to your backstage knowledge of the club? Yeah, I'm sure I probably would. Yeah, I guess so. I think it's more just not doing it at a match because I'm working. That's all it is, really. I'm sure I'd probably have kind of, pumped a fist kind of thing when they've scored and I haven't been working and I've been watching it on the telly. I'm sure I have. It's just kind of switching into work mode, really. That's all it is. Conducci asks, thoughts on the Juve board resignation. Wow, yeah. Big old mess there, isn't there? Wow. I don't know what's going to happen with Juve. There's some talks about potential relegation, as if there's any financial stuff is found to not quite be right. I don't know. I don't know what you mean in terms of what would it mean with Spurs and Conte, because obviously Conte and Agnelli had this very difficult relationship. We don't really know at this point what it means and kind of repercussions. What I would say is, knowing the way Spurs operate, if there's any case of Juve needing money, I think Spurs will look at a few of those players and work out and try to take the ones they want. So that's probably the biggest thing I'd take away from it if there's any kind of rebound. But no, like anyone else, I'm intrigued to see what happens with that club. That's a big thing to happen for everything to people that have been there for years as well. Agnelli especially. That's a big, big change. And then obviously we see what comes next. Altair 8598 asks, Harry Winks was the 78th Spurs player to make the England squad. Spurs have provided more than any other team, but how do you think this is when we haven't dominated the league as much as several other clubs? I guess it's just it's a difficult one. I guess Spurs often get kind of criticised for their kind of, I suppose, their homegrown players and stuff, but over the years they have produced a lot. I mean, even yesterday, look, Cameron Carter-Vickers, I know it's not England, but playing for America and playing well as well. I think we do down a little bit on what the Spurs Academy produces. But yeah, there's been lots of teams. I don't think you have to dominate, because some of these teams that dominate, they can have a majority of foreign players. So it doesn't always work that they're going to produce the most England players. I mean, obviously like West Ham, we've got Declan Rice, superb player. I don't think it naturally translates. Certainly in England, you do see it in other kind of countries that maybe Real Madrid and Barcelona provide the bulk of Spanish players for their national team. But in England, it doesn't always really work like that. Tottenham have always had quite a good record of producing England players. Likes of even like Ryan Mason obviously played for England. Jake Livermore, I think, got a cap as well. Michael Dawson got a few. Even these players that maybe you wouldn't consider to be the greatest ever Premier League players, maybe that's a comment on the quality of England squad. I don't know, or how they were playing at the time. Harry Winks is a great example of a player at the time who was really finding his groove and was a kind of a talented young player. I don't think there's a kind of definitive answer to that. I think it's just that, I guess, the academy has produced a lot of players that have gone on to have good professional careers, and in doing so have also got themselves England caps. It's probably the way to look at it. James Reddit asks, does Guesty watch your videos, and have you got him to admit to having a soft spot for Spurs yet? I don't know whether he watches my videos. Probably not. If you don't know who Guesty is, it's Rob Guest, who I do the podcast with, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. Has he got a soft spot for Tottenham? I think he has. Because of his professional side, covering them every week in, week out. A bit like me when I used to cover various teams at non-league level, and Steve is League 2. I do think you have a soft spot for them. He probably won't ever admit it, but he does. What else we got here? Craig Bowler 5248. Where are we at with the women's academy that's supposed to be being built at Whitewebs Golf Course? It's been a while since they were awarded the lease. I don't know. That's a good one. I'll look into that. This is the thing. I often get planning questions, which is ironic when we talk about the previous question. But Spurs have got so many little bits and pieces that are going on, and often they'll get planning applications for stuff, and then just the work won't start on them, or they'll seen as a future phase. There's a chap who keeps asking me about the hotel that's going to be eventually was planned to be built on the south side of the stadium, and often I think that's probably a good example of they get these ideas for things, they put in applications so they have it, but ultimately to have the money involved to do something like that and the time it takes, often these are things that are years in the future, like a future phase thing. So yeah, I haven't checked on a load of these. I will. I'll do a big old. I'm back to work from Sunday, so I will probably have a sit down and I'm going to look through all of the various planning applications and the phases of where they're at, what's meant to be happening, and I will work through those. And Whitewebs is probably one of the more recent ones with the golf course and the women's academy. I know they've been doing various bits of work around the training ground because I've seen it. New kind of physio areas and rooms for the women's team and the academy and the media centre, not for us, but for the people that work within the club that do their like social media stuff. There's going to be new video studios, recording studios for staff and everything. I know that's being built. That's been a little while, so I wouldn't imagine that's too far off now. But no, I'll go and kind of check. There was meant to be an amphitheatre at the training ground as well for like the local school children to come and kind of hold lessons in and things. There's loads of little bits for me to chase up on, so I will. What else we got? I get a few questions of people asking how they get tickets. I'm probably the worst person to speak to for that because I don't have to pay for tickets. I don't, as in my tickets anyway. I get press access through my reporting and my license that I have for that. So, yeah, I don't really know the best avenues to get tickets. You're better off kind of probably asking other fans that do. Aaron Simmons, 2997. Are there any books you've read that you would like to see made into a movie? I like Matthew Riley books. They're good fun. When I want a bit of a kind of a fast-paced kind of action-y adventure book, I like Matthew Riley books. There's a few of those I'd like to see made into a film. That'd be very good. What else we got? Simon Gaza asks, well done on 200 videos. It's 201 now. How many more videos will there be before we win a trophy? I hate to say it, but I think it'll be at least another 100. I'm doing that 2 a week at the moment. If I keep doing 2 a week, then who knows? I suppose it would have to be probably the FA Cup in terms of the percentage chances. Yeah, you might be right. We'll see. John Turning 9889. Will Spurs consider signing Cristiano Ronaldo in January? Will Paratici be tempted? I'm sure he might be tempted. Obviously, he was the man that took him to Juventus. I don't think as brilliant a player as Ronaldo has been, one of the greatest the world's ever seen, I don't know if putting him into the Spurs environment would just create the same issues for him that he had at United in terms of minutes and game time. I don't think it works for all round, but yeah. What else we got? Russell Emberson 4510. What's your favourite non-Raiders Star Wars Harrison Ford film? Probably Witness. Witness is superb. Got an Oscar nomination for that. That was brilliant. A bit partial to Air Force One. That was on the other night. I got to see the "Get Off of My Plane" line, which was very cool. But yeah, Witness was very, very cool. I like the Jack Ryan ones as well, Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. They were both very good as well. Yeah, someone's made a good point. I did forget. Tetley 7880. I was asked which player would I take from a rival club and sign them for Spurs. I said Saka. And I actually did forget. It's quite right. They've suggested that I maybe forgot Reece James. I did. Probably Reece James because that's more of a squad need if he's not going to play Jed Spence. So yes, quite right indeed. Ryan Federico 539, can you shed some light on what's going on with Jaffet? Tanganga, why isn't he playing? Is it a result of his injury from last season? He did have an injury again at the start of this season, and he's just, unfortunately, just not really near the first team at the moment. I mean, this is a good period for him as well to work with Conte and his fitness. But yeah, Jaffet's just had a mare with those injuries. Every time he's kind of been getting somewhere, he's had an injury. And I do think the best thing for him was going out on loan in summer. It didn't happen. Emre Sonny, 847 asked, do you think Harry Kane wants to stay in Tottenham? Yeah, I think at the moment, certainly. I think what happens with Conte will be interesting, and where he's backed and how he's backed. I think that will play a big part in what's to come. But yeah, it's going to be a big second half to the season. I do think so. And like I said, there's been certainly a feeling that from Harry Kane's side that he'd be interested in, he'd be willing to hold talks about a new contract. So we'll see. What else we got? How is Dylan Markanday doing at Blackburn? Asked Derek Smith 6126. Surprised he wasn't mentioned. Oh yeah, that was because I spoke about players that left, but they left last summer. As Dylan wasn't last summer, was he? He was January, and then he got that really rubbish injury that put him out for months. I think he's back. I think he's getting minutes. I'm sure I saw he was getting minutes. He's one I'll have to look up because I haven't kept an eye on him recently, but I know he got a really bad injury. Was it on his debut? It might have even been on his debut for Blackburn. Yeah, no, very talented player though. But I'm intrigued to see where he goes with his career. And obviously injury will play its part and whether he can steer clear of that. But I'm intrigued to see whether he can end up being a Premier League player or not. He had such an amazing first half to that season when he left Spurs, and the second half to the previous season. He was on fire. So, yeah. Ian Mortimer 7959. Likewise, with the Red Bull teams producing talent through their youth academies on a regular basis, is this something that Paratici is looking to replicate at Spurs? I think it's all clubs want to do that. They want to replicate. They want to produce a production line essentially of young players that come through into the first team. So, yeah, I think it's an obvious yes for that one. Of course, it is. A lot of changes with the academy, emerging scouts being brought in, lots more of those. Obviously, new faces kind of helping head them up as well. So helping Dean Rustrick, the academy manager. You've got Simon Davies, who's coming used to be at Man City. He's come in as well, and there's various scouts that have kind of got how do I put it? Some of their scope is to look over young players and bring them in as well. So, yeah, of course, that's the dream, is always to produce your own players because it also saves you money as well. Bo Sullivan 5462 asks, I don't want to get carried away, but am I the only one who sees a great template for Jed Spence in Alphonso Davies? I think there are similarities there. Jed Spence can be as good a player as he wants to be. Like I said, I was just watching him in the training kind of photos and stuff coming back to Hotspur Way. It's such a big period for him. This is, it feels like a lifetime that we've got almost a month still until Spurs play. But for Jed Spence, it's such a big month. This is his chance to work with the coaches without the distraction of not playing in matches, whatever. They're going to have 3, at least, I think, behind closed doors friendlies. So, these will all be a chance for him to show that you can take everything they want on board. And then the decision will come on what happens in the second half of the season, whether that is going out on loan or whether that is being a more featured member of Conte's squad. Alphonso Davies, yes, it's a kind of player that you should look to kind of replicate that sort of stuff. And I've got such big hopes for Jed Spence. I just hope that he, realises it at Tottenham, really. So there you go. Right, do you know what? I think I'm probably going to wrap it up there because I'm aware that I'm sounding quite snotty as well. And I don't think anyone needs to be subjected to that for much longer. I think the key is try to not sneeze just before I do a video. Seems to be the way to go right now. So yes, matches today. Of course, we've got, it depends when you're watching this, we've got Poland, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and the earlier ones are Australia, Denmark, Tunisia, France. And in the biggie on Sunday for England against Senegal. Not sure whether I'll do a video this weekend. I'm very wary that if I do too many of these, I end up repeating myself, especially with not too much new stuff to talk about. So I might hang on a bit and maybe do one in midweek at some point. Unless something big in the world of Tottenham happens, we'll see. This is the thing, there's a natural kind of knock-on effect from, I'm back at work on Sunday. I'm going to use these last few days. I'm going to go to cinema today to watch Black Panther, finally get to see that. Maybe see a couple of others as well. And then back at work on Sunday, and once I'm kind of back in full work mode, I'll kind of do lots of digging around, and that may find that I have enough to scrape together another video before a week's time. But also, you guys having a break from my face and voice isn't the worst thing in the world. So yeah, right, I'm going to head off now. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, or I shall catch you later. Goodbye.